Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. I was planning to check out Begonia yesterday, but I honestly just wasn't feeling like heading out yesterday. Just wasn't feeling it. So I'm actually going to check it out on Friday. So I decided to just chillax here at home and decide to check out this because I was actually very curious, especially given some of the recent conversations that have been happening surrounding this film. That film that we're going to be discussing today is A House of Dynamite, which was directed by Catherine Bigelow, who you guys may be familiar with movies such as The Hurt Locker, which I really enjoyed, as well as Zero Dark 30, which I have not seen, and most recently with a film called Detroit, which I also have not seen. This stars Idris Elba, Rebecca Ferguson, Gabriel Basso, Jared Harris, as well as Anthony Ramos, I think, is also in it as well. And as the story goes, the story follows our government, the United States government, as they are tracking a missile launch from an unknown origin, and the missile is heading towards our country, specifically that of Chicago. And the film explores varying perspectives of the dealings of this, frankly, impending doom from the intelligence agency, from the President of the United States, to ground forces or Pacific bases to help with this endeavor, and seeing everybody's reactions to a realization that there's little hope in the situation that is before them. So Catherine Bigelow, of course, being who she is very much steeped recently as a filmmaker into the political scene, at least in terms of conversations revolving around the government or within more or less, at least to what I've seen, with her relations to that of the army. And the film more or less is about the government this time around. With the case of like the Hurt Locker, it was a lot more to do with the mentality, within soldiers, at least within specific kinds of soldiers, and how the deterioration of them in some respects, at least as far as I remember of that film. But this is a peculiar case because I do think that there is, as evident, within the Hurt Locker, there is some good sense of tension that is embedded within this piece. The sense of just dread and doom, the very bleak nature that it holds. It is very palpable, and you feel that stress, embedded through you. Absolutely, I felt it as we were going through the motions. I just felt myself just getting rather tense and stressed, realizing, that ultimately there is no good situation to come out of this particular situation. And the film explores this actually through three distinct chapters. The first of which is, I believe, through the intelligence agency, also with specific army forces on the ground. The second of which is within the House Speaker and certain representatives inside the White House, and then the last of which being with the President of the United States. And I think that on paper that does sound interesting, but what the film does have an issue with is that all three of these distinctions don't necessarily have distinctions to them because of a lack of development and a lack of real understanding as to why we need to see these three stories play out separately, because ultimately they are rattling the same positionings as what we've established within the first chapters. We can understand where the president's coming at. We can understand where the soldiers are coming at, where the agency is coming from. It doesn't feel as though when we get to the next few chapters that there is brand new information that actually, gives the situation more substance or gives it a certain dimension. There's little sprinkles here and there, but it doesn't feel as though that in that structuring of its story that it feels completely warranted in that respect. And in that, you get a great sense of repetition that's taking place within the structuring of that narrative, and having to play it out essentially, in some respects, 3 times in a row. It just doesn't feel as though that we're getting much deeper to the rudimentary of its problem, or the rudimentary of this problem. And I feel as though that also showcases the issue, I feel, thematically speaking, with its story. Because ultimately it is that of what I described, that about impending doom and about, a lack of real options, because the ending is rather bleak, if rather abrupt. But then there's a point to that because of what is at stake and ultimately what is laid out. There is no good option. So the option itself is not important. It is not as vital to see play out. And I think that might come as a point of a controversy, because I thought I read somewhere that people had taken issues about how the film ended. I took it more as, the film completely being capsulated by its bleakness and illustrating that there is no good option in this situation at all. So there is no point to actually seeing the point of what Idris Elba's character, what he ultimately decides on. It's just, there is no good option here. There's probably potential, it's not in my point of view, but just I could see also people taking issue with this maybe being fear-mongering, framing, the government in a certain way. There's definitely points to where I see controversy taking place in this because of just, just how the internet is. But I think that what the film has as a fundamental problem is getting more deeper into the situation itself, because it feels as though we're just more or less exercising just kind of more or less an experience of said situation, but not in a detail-oriented explanation of said situation. It's just more or less just showing us the bleakness of what our government can potentially be if they were to be exploited. And, in that there is some interesting things to hold on to, and the situation itself, how it is crafted, does lend itself to palpable stress and tension. But the structuring of this within these 3 chapters, it feels as more or less a repetition of what we have just seen almost in the first 30 or 40 minutes. So, and in that, it feels also rather thin in terms of what it is trying to get at as a thematic study, or as a point of commentary. So I think that, there are good performances here. I think all of which, do provide good work. Rebecca Ferguson, I think she does great work. Idris Elba, I think he also puts in a good performance. Anthony Ramos, I also thought he was pretty good in it as well. But I just think that the film itself is just lacking in that sense of meaning, and more or less being that of just a isolated experience. But in isolated experiences, you also only get very specific points of understanding and meaning, which in a film that is roughly 2 hours long, at some point it does feel as though that we are just treading the same water each time and not getting any deeper than what we already have established. So as it is, it's not bad. I don't think it's necessarily great either. I just think that it is. I think that it is not as hard-hitting as it could be, and just feels like we're just kind of cycling through the same emotions each time and not getting to a greater understanding or a greater depth of the situation itself. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on A House of Dynamite. I thought it was good, kind of like that. Like, it's like a soft, it's good, not like it's good. It's good, Like I said, I think there's good performances there. I think that the general craftsmanship taking place is fascinating. But I just feel as though the structuring of that story does not lend itself to depth as much as it feels more repeating of what we have established at the very beginning. It feels like a short film and a feature, if you were to ask me. It feels like you could tell the story in 30, 40 minutes, and I feel like it would have been a lot more satisfying in that regard. But those are my thoughts on House of Dynamite. You guys, let me know your thoughts on House of Dynamite if you guys have checked it out. Again, it has some controversial nature to it because it's, politics. So, but let me know if you guys have any thoughts. If you guys checked it out, your guys' thoughts on Catherine Bigelow as a filmmaker. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Oops, sorry, my mic. Sorry. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.